SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
We are going to talk about winners and losers today on iGaming Daily. First, we're going to discuss how the skill game lobby in Virginia managed to turn a losing hand into a winning one during a year where other verticals are struggling to make progress. Then, we're going to discuss the winners and losers of the film world as Johnny Avello of DraftKings joins us to discuss this year's Oscars race and the betting markets around everything from acting races to the song I'm Just Ken. iGaming Daily is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 56% of the EGR Power 50 personalized player experiences with Optimove. And another special offer. Optimove is offering new clients a first month free when they buy Optimove. For more information and to claim that offer, go to optimove.com/SBC. All right, welcome to iGaming Daily. I'm your host, Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas, joined by media manager Charlie Horner. And Charlie, I bet you were a little surprised when I was like, hey, remember that skill games ban you've written about for 2 years? That's gone and it's legal, or about to be legal now in Virginia.
Yeah, it's been a bizarre story over the last couple of years where seemingly people can't, make their minds up. It was an interesting message to wake up to.
For those who are not familiar, skill games or gray machines or, like the optics of what you even call them are somewhat politicized. Sure do look and seem like slot machines. I'm going to use an example of one that was presented in a court case in Pennsylvania. Essentially, this game is a slot machine, but every once in a while there is a game that you can play within the game where you opt out of like the slot machine interface and you go and you play, for those of you raised in the 80s, essentially a game of Simon, where you follow the lights. Do you remember? You're too young for this probably. Simon, you have red, green, blue, yellow, and there's a flashing light pattern and you have to mimic it. This game in this particular machine takes 16 minutes to play if you get it all right. And if you do, you get like half a bet back. So like 50 cents or something. And because they've injected this skill-based game in the middle of the slot machine that is completely tangential to the slot machine, they argue it is a skill game. We banned these in Kentucky last year. That got through despite a lot of people from the local businesses and mini marts coming out and Trump stumping against it. Virginia did the same thing. So Virginia banned these in 2020. Then the governor was like, listen, COVID's tough. Let's hold off. Let local businesses make money off these machines a little longer. In 2021, they tried to put the ban into effect. And then there was basically like a 2-year court challenge. And then, Charlie, I was looking it up. You wrote the story that back in November, that court challenge kind of reached its conclusion and it was determined that this ban was legal, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, like you said there, Jess, it was in the courts for about 2 years. But yeah, the Supreme Court of Virginia ruled that these skill games would be banned, which would have brought the end of the grey skill game machines in Virginia forever. Here we are, about 4 months later, and they could be back.
Yeah, I will tell you, there may be no more tenacious lobby than the skill games lobby. They do not give up easily. Most of the work that they've done in other states has been in the courts. In Pennsylvania, for example, they've tried to get favorable rulings in small kind of local courts. And now we're at the point in Pennsylvania where the Attorney General is pushing the Supreme Court to make a larger decision on this so that there's a more conclusive stance in the state on it. We've seen in Texas, there have been some legal challenges at the court levels for this. They came into Virginia with a plan, though. And they came in with a lot of lawmakers on their side and supporting them, who knows if they donated to get that support? Remains to be seen. And so last week, very quickly, this bill kind of made its way through the Senate and through the House and is now on its way to Governor Glenn Youngkin's desk, where he may not sign it because he's not necessarily actively against these, but he's skeptical and has some questions about them. And this process raises a couple of eyebrows. For example, the lawmakers with the bill basically demanded that this bill not be routed to the committee that handles gambling issues. And instead, they routed it through, I believe, like the one that handles alcohol, because what this bill does is it allows liquor stores to have up to 4 skill game machines in it, truck stops to have up to 10. You pay a licensing fee as a manufacturer, you pay a licensing fee as an operator, you're taxed at 25%. And there is a mechanism that at the local level, you can have a voter referendum and vote to keep these out of your county or not. And it got through both chambers very, very quickly. What's interesting to me is I feel like I've done nothing these days but write and tweet about the cannibalization argument that is happening in states like Maryland around online casino, where small businesses and labor unions are parading out witness after witness saying that if you bring this industry to our state, we are going to lose jobs. Casinos are going to lose jobs. The lotto is going to lose jobs. Last year at Nickel Geese, I remember speaking with Drew Svitko, who's the director of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board, who is like, I have data. I have exact data that shows you that these machines in particular cannibalize VGTs and lottery, and they do not, they are taking money out of the lotto's pocket, out of the state's pocket, and out of regulated groups' pockets. So that this bill just seems to sail through without this question around it is crazy, to me at least. Charlie, do you have any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's surprising and it is confusing in a sense that, yeah, if there are people out there who are saying there is this compelling evidence to say that the state lottery and taking away jobs from the state lottery is something completely different than taking it away from the local casinos, because the state lotteries are there to essentially provide funding for good causes and top up public finances and that kind of thing. So taking away jobs from those establishments and having them in these liquor stores and that kind of thing does seem a little bit confusing. However, I do see the opposite argument about supporting those local businesses who have had it exceptionally rough over the last 3 or 4 years, particularly since COVID and the sort of economic downturn that we've seen since then. That, if people are coming in and, buying a few beers, having a game of these skill machines, and it's keeping them in there for, an hour longer than maybe they normally would be, then that's providing a bit of a boost to these local businesses.
Yeah, you've hit on what I think is the most interesting thing I've seen this legislative session, which is in past years, gaming bills have really just kind of had to prove that they are bringing in a new source of revenue, that they're legalizing something that people are already doing. And voila, you generally were going to get passed unless you had a lot of kind of religious or moral opposition to gambling in your state. What I'm seeing this year is opponents to these online gambling bills are really bringing the optics of the impact on local businesses to what they're doing. In a Maryland hearing, I think it was last week. I'm sorry, guys, this time of year is all a blur. I don't know what day it is, what time it is, and what state I've been listening to, but I know this was Maryland. They had a witness come and testify. The man owned a floor installation company in Maryland, and he basically argued that if you brought online casino into the state, his floor installation company was going to lose $200,000 because foot traffic would be down at casinos, ergo foot traffic would be down at businesses around casinos, ergo those businesses around casinos would not have money to put in new floors. I mean, like, it's 3 degrees removed, but like that kind of testimony when you are a local lawmaker who relies on local people to vote for you is impactful. The unions are bringing out casino workers who are talking about, I am a bartender. I make $120,000 a year bartending in a casino. I've been able to buy a house. I've been able to put my kids through college. And if you legalize online casinos, I might be homeless. I'm not really exaggerating the testimony here. And it started in Mississippi. And I think we've seen, because we have such a duopoly of FanDuel and DraftKings, on the casino side, a little less. It's more like 3 or 4 of them. BetMGM, obviously the big player. Their Caesars coming up. Their point is, okay, that's money for 3 or 4 gigantic companies that are not based in this state. And that money's coming from somewhere, and it could be our pockets. It could be my job. It could be this local casino that can't compete. And I think that pivot has really boded poorly for the gaming industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, we've seen it in Pennsylvania where something similar has happened, and the American Gaming Association has come out against these skill game machines. So we can see that there is opposition from the regulated side of the industry, but yeah, we're talking about the legislature where they are dependent on voters who are local people who work in these local businesses, who pay their taxes locally and in the state. So pitting that against these national operators who are headquartered elsewhere does seem like a battle that the industry is destined to lose.
Yeah, I won't name the person, but talking with some of the people and lobbyists, someone I spoke with was like, it's a freaking genius move. I wish I had thought of it. Like it's a really smart optical play. For those of you who aren't in the United States, like inflation continues to be a big discussion here. And even though like in theory, it's getting a little bit better, everyone feels like it's still really tough out there, especially at restaurants and bars. You have a lot of groups that are adding auto gratuities. They're adding 10% service charges. So I'm not surprised that that's the group that is coming out in strong support and saying, hey, this is an issue. I will quickly correct myself. So I will save our producers that I actually had a note come in from someone to inform me that this Virginia bill at one point did have an opt-out in it. I don't believe that the final version actually has that local market opt-out, which I think is interesting because if there is a local group that is arguably as grumpy and contentious as the skill games people, it is the NIMBYs of the world who are like, keep your gambling out of my neighborhood. So it is going to be kind of interesting if this can be in literally anywhere with a liquor license. That opens up potential for, everybody's like, what if it's terrible to have a casino in your pocket? Well, if it's going to be on every street corner, I don't really know how big a difference that is. All right, we're going to keep an eye on whether or not Governor Youngkin signs that bill. Charlie, I'm going to bid you adieu. Apologies, but we've got to make room for a guest I'm super excited to talk about, and a topic that is literally the only thing I am extremely and eminently qualified to bet on, and that is wagering on the Oscars. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. I am joined by Director of Race and Sportsbook Operations at DraftKings, Johnny Avello. Johnny, you and I have something in common, which is a passion for Oscars betting. I love how much you champion this. It's been going in the U.S. for a few years. Is this a market? I know it's small, but is it getting bigger year in and year out?
Yeah, Jessica, it's getting better. We started off with one state when we launched back in 2000. We actually launched our sports wagering back in 2018. It was in the late summer, August. And then, of course, the Oscars took place in March. And so that was the first Oscars we were able to take wagers on. Of course, I've been doing Oscars since 1994 for entertainment purposes only. And so we finally had that opportunity to take wagers on them. And we had one state. That's all it took them at that time. That was New Jersey. And so now we're up to 7. It's growing. Others will come on board slowly. It's a lot of, let me see what it looks like this year. This is our first year in taking sports wagering. So I don't want to jump into any entertainment odds, but eventually they do. So we'll have more to come. But right now we're at 7, and it has grown year by year.
And for people who don't know, this is a fairly limited category in terms of, like, nobody's winning. You're not getting Mattress Mac betting $1 million on Oppenheimer or anything like that, right?
That's true. No one has even asked us to bet that type of money on the Oscars. It's normally anywhere from $10 to $500. It's usually $500 is a pretty big bet. We've taken some thousands, but it's normally smaller money for this type of wagering opportunity.
Gotcha. I got really into it the year of Bohemian Rhapsody and Black Panther, and actually went to New Jersey to bet, which was a lot of fun. I'm curious, this seems like the first year we've had in a while where there's been like a blockbuster or two in the mix. I know when we had that year with Black Panther, the betting interest was on these more popular movies. Has the betting interest this year, even though Oppenheimer's kind of the favorite for a lot of things, do you see interest in the Barbies of the world just because it's a more popular movie?
Yeah, well, we've taken some money on Barbie. First of all, Oppenheimer is such a big favorite, and there's a lot of big favorites this year. We always have a lot of favorites during the Oscars, but there's usually a couple of categories that you could go either way. Now, we do have that, but they're not like even money and plus 120. They're still minus $2 and plus 170, which if that's the one category that's open, well, that hasn't happened in a while. These 1 to 50 odds are just really, really high. You just don't see this across the board on a lot of categories. So with Oppenheimer being 1 to 50, which is minus 5,000, we were seeing bettors take shots on, yes, Barbie at 35 to 1. Yes, the Holdovers at 28 to 1. Poor Things is renting a little bit of money at 20 to 1. Even though Oppenheimer has the most money bet on it, it's because 50 to win $1. It doesn't take much for that to be the top handle of the category. But they're taking chances on some of those other movies, and why not? I mean, there are surprises from time to time in the Oscars. It's rare that a big favorite loses, but I've seen it before. I remember with Chadwick Boseman was 1 to 20.
Oh, yeah.
Plus Anthony Hopkins, which was really a big surprise. I thought he had that locked up. The
producers did too. They ended the show with Best Actor for the first time, and then it was like, oh, by the way, Anthony Hopkins isn't even here. Thank you and good night.
Then they scrambled to end the show like, oh my God, what happened? So let's just give him the award and get it over with. So yeah, that was a shocker. So it does happen from time to time, but yeah, but this is a very strong favorite this year, Oppenheimer.
You've mentioned Oppenheimer's Best Picture favorite. It seems, the supporting categories, very prohibitive favorites. Even, I guess Best Actress is maybe the most open of the big five, but Emma Stone's still favored there. How do you keep it? How do you get bettors interested in taking prohibitive favorites like this for the Oscars race? Do they get Do they parlay it with another sport? Do they do something else to keep it interesting and make it worthwhile for them?
That's exactly what they do. They take it and, if you think it's a sure thing. Now, of course, if you take the Best Actress category with Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone, maybe that's not such a sure thing. Emma Stone was actually the favorite for the last 2 months, and now Lily Gladstone, from when the SAG Award is, moved up to the favorite and getting bet even heavier at minus 225. But minus 225, 1-2 favorite, that is no sure thing, in betting and certainly in the Oscars. So that's the category they wouldn't touch. They would touch something like Robert Downey Jr. For supporting actor, who is minus 3,500, which is 1-35. They would take him and maybe bet him with a Duke on a Saturday, just to kind of enhance those odds a little bit on Duke, figuring that this is a sure thing, if it is actually a sure thing.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's granted. But yeah, I'm not a big bettor, but I'm thinking to myself, I would just, in every parlay, be throwing in Christopher Nolan for Best Director. Just like, why not? Just pad a leg and good to go. So, interesting.
Yeah, the thing you mentioned, Christopher Nolan, and that's an interesting pick, because I think Christopher Nolan's going to win. He's 1-50 or minus 5,000. And there's other minus 5,000 in all the 23 categories. So why would Christopher Nolan be the one that someone may, direct their attention to more than the other big favorites? And in my opinion, that's because of the Directors Guild. When the Directors Guild gives an award out, usually over 90% of the time, that person wins the best director. So that's one that when you see minus 50 when he's won the Directors Guild, it's one you can zero in on pretty good. If he doesn't win, it could be one of the biggest upsets of all time.
Yeah, he's also one of those directors, too, that everybody wants to give an Oscar to at some point, and you kind of feel like they have their moment, and this is his moment. You mentioned, the DGA is a huge predictor, PGA is a huge predictor. I'm curious your thoughts over the past, 7 or 8 years, it feels like. The Academy has done quite a bit to expand its voting group and diversify it. Have you seen that some of these kind of tried and true trends that we've relied on in terms of picking Oscar winners are shifting at all? Or for now, is it still pretty solidly, that you can rely on PGA for Best Picture is more than I'm picking one that's actually not been as successful as others. We'll go DGA for Best Director. Have you seen any of that kind of shift at all?
I think I have. I mean, they have expanded. They needed to expand. I think, you'll see more African Americans now being nominated who should be nominated. Lily Gladstone here, Native American. So I think it has become more diverse. I'm happy for the change that happened a few years ago. And, it's certainly reflected in the nominees. And in that case, some of the winners. So, good change that happened a few years back.
Yeah, Lily Gladstone won the SAG Award. Actors, obviously, the biggest branch of the Academy. That this seems like, it makes sense that she would be making the push now. I've had this theory lately, and you tell me what you think of it, that with the Best Picture nominees, the Academy kind of feels like everybody needs to get something. Everybody hopefully can kind of win one. And when I did that this morning, the ones that kind of came up short with nothing were Past Lives and Killers of the Flower Moon. And, to me, Lily Gladstone could be a way to kind of check that box and get that done. Do you see that in the awards more, or am I making this up, that they do seem to want to share the wealth compared to the Titanic year where one movie takes home 14 Oscars?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Not in the Academy. Maybe you'll see that in other award shows. I'll notice that in the the Grammys, first of all, is totally different than all award shows because it's about not only is it the best music of the year, maybe, but it's also about who's been hot this year and, who the writers have been talking about. This here is supposed to be concentrated on the best body of work for that particular category. And I think it kind of sticks that way for the most part, at least in my years of observing it. There are some, if you look at best original screenplay, you got Anatomy of a Fall in there, and you've got some of the movies that I thought, The Holdovers and Past Lives. And so I think they do a pretty fair job of, and a fair job of being fair, I guess. I think they try to pick the ones who are really deserving of the category. I don't think they go down and say, well, we got 23 categories. Maybe this one's kind of been slighted this year and it's going to get slighted, so let's pencil it in. I don't believe that's happening.
Okay. I hate to have you give tips for people to potentially take DraftKings for a win, but is there a race that you think is more wide open than the others? To me, production design is one where it's either going to go Barbie or Poor Things, and you're not really sure which one is going to get there, that maybe there's some value there. Do you see any other categories like that where, barring an upset, it's a little more open?
Animated features one. We got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as a small favorite, but I could see an upset. I could see The Boy and the Heron at plus 110 with an upset there. So there are some categories where, you might find that type of value. Some of these are so chalky this year, though, that it's kind of ridiculous. In the best adapted screenplay, you got American Fiction as minus 250, but Oppenheimer's plus $2. So if Oppenheimer has one of those nights, and the kind of night I'm talking about, where it just seems like the dominoes are falling, that's the second choice there at plus $2. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if even Barbie for a screenplay at plus $5 won too. So that's where I think the value is in some of those categories. And I'll tell you, there are some people who are pretty sharp on this, who have good opinions. So, I wouldn't be afraid to go with some of those small underdogs in some of those other categories.
Do you think, we've had a couple years now, you mentioned it's a really chalky year. Has COVID really just made these races chalky for a few years because we've seen a slowdown in production? Plus we had, a strike on top of it. There's just a smaller kind of, not smaller, but the scope of big budget movies hasn't really been what it's usually been for the past few years. Has that been part of the reason things have gotten so chalky?
That's a good point, Jessica. I really never thought about why this is probably the biggest favorites we've had across the board in any year that I've been doing it. And that even goes back to when, before we were taking odds on it. That is very possible. Movies now are now seen on Netflix and streaming services where you wouldn't be able to see these movies on streaming services in the past. So maybe that is the reason where they're in your face, you're getting to see them, and all the voters are just zeroing in on them. And because I'm not sure, the way this works is that the voters were always sent, and I'm sure that's still the same way. They're sent the movies. Do they actually watch them? I don't know, but they certainly have some opinions on some of their friends and Hollywood community who they like, and I'm sure some of that goes into it too. But I think everybody gets to vote on the movies. The actors get to vote on the actor categories, and but I haven't really thought about that before with the COVID times here. But maybe that does play into it.
All right. Last question, not so much an odds one. Just curious, what was your favorite of this crop of movies this year? What one did you watch and you were like, this is the best movie of the year?
I saw most of them. There's one or two that I didn't see, but the one that I think I liked the most was The Holdovers. And I like Killers of the Flower Moon too. I thought that was well done. Quite depressing, but well done. But The Holdovers I found to be very entertaining. Paul Giamatti was great job of acting, held my attention the entire time, and a little bit different of movie of some of these this year. So that was one of my favorites. That's not going to win, but it's probably fifth choice or so. But I always disagree with the best movie for my entertainment purposes. But I do realize why best movies win. And if people out there don't understand, is because it's everything that's encompassed in that movie. It's about cinematography. It's about directing. It's about acting. Now, it's not that Oppenheimer doesn't deserve to win this year because it was very good. And I did enjoy it. But, for sheer entertainment purposes only, my favorite would have been The Holdovers.
I think that's a pretty good pick too. That was a great one. Felt like a spiritual sequel to Sideways too. Since the same director, but I'm going to cut myself off now because I could talk about this with you for hours. But I've got to find time to get to Indiana at some point this week so I can get a couple bets down before Sunday since I'm in Kentucky. So I am going to let you go. Guys, you have until Sunday to bet on the Oscars at DraftKings, and if you are in one of the 7 states where you can. Johnny, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can have you come back next year.
Oh, you're welcome, Jessica. Good seeing you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.